It's a new era. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to do Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Yep, this is weird. Grossi, and it is the day that a lot of Packers fans have been anticipating. A lot of emotions, of course, as Aaron Rodgers has indicated that he will be playing football next season, and it will not be for the Green Bay Packers, but it will be for the New York Jets. And I was going to take a bunch of notes and go through kind of a lot of things, but instead I have just written two notes. And one of the notes is Aaron Rodgers' stats. Aaron Rodgers, 15-year starter of the Green Bay Packers, has been on the team since 2005. He will leave Green Bay with 223 starts, 147 wins, 75 losses, and one tie, 5,001 completions, 65.3% completion rating, 59,055 yards, 475 passing touchdowns, 105 interceptions, a QBR of 103.6, and 719 rushing yards and 35 rushing TDs. That's the first note that I wrote down. And I'm going to go through a bunch of things here. And let's kind of start by recapping the Pat McAfee appearance, in which there were over 400,000 concurrent viewers in there for the Pat McAfee show, which is a huge triumph for them. So a big shout out and congrats to them, because that is honestly something absolutely incredible. It basically broke YouTube for a bit. Those guys have created something really special over there, and they got arguably the biggest story in recent years in terms of the NFL. So let's kind of talk about what happened there. So Rodgers comes on. It starts off, they're talking about the darkness retreat a lot, and eventually Rodgers gets to the point where he says, I was never going to come on this show and say, here's my decision. And he said that this is not decision day. Instead, that decision has been made, and it has been made for about a week at this point. And the decision was based on the darkness retreat, in which before he went into the darkness, the Green Bay Packers basically said, doors open for you. If you want to come back and play, excellent. If you want to retire as a Packer, that's excellent too. And Rodgers all off season has been saying that there was just a feeling. There was a nagging feeling that something was going on with the organization, that they didn't really want him back, that it was kind of, we had to figure out what the organization wants. And meanwhile, publicly, the organization was saying that they wanted Aaron Rodgers back. Goody, back in January, after the end of the season, said, we want Aaron Rodgers back. LaFleur said that they wanted Rodgers back. And so there was this kind of disconnect that was going on between what was said in the public and what was going on privately. And Rodgers was just saying, it's nothing that the organization has even said to me privately. It's just a feeling I have. And before the darkness retreat, the organization said, come on back, you can play and or retire. Rodgers said, great. He goes into the darkness, and he said that 90% of him wanted to retire. He spent a day contemplating retirement, and 10% of it was, I'm going to go back and play. And when he left the darkness, he said that something changed with the organization. And I even indicated this because things started changing publicly. Because when the combine was going on, Goody basically came out and did not say, oh yeah, we want him back 100%. Things started to shift a little bit. And instead, and I did a whole video on it, and instead he said, well, we got to see what works out for both sides. And there was a little seed of doubt. Now, fast forward a little bit between this decision-making process and Mark Murphy going out and saying, hey, sure, we could have Aaron back if things don't work out the way that we want them to, strongly indicating that the Packers were done with Aaron Rodgers. And reports started flooding and talking about, okay, is this the time? The Jets, of course, fly out to meet with Rodgers. The Packers gave him permission. When Murphy was asked about this, he said, we're just kind of doing right by Aaron and trying to make it work for both sides. Again, indicating that there was a split that was going to occur. And Rodgers kind of got back on this kick of the organization is not treating either alums or soon to be alums of the Packers correctly in their exit, in which he talked about Jordy Nelson, he talked about Charles Woodson, he talked about Randall Cobb, he talked about Clay Matthews, about how all of these guys who have kind of made history with the Packers, that the Packers really haven't treated them right. Clay Matthews being like, yeah, no, we don't want you back. You see Jordy, he gets cut. All these things that happen. And it seems to come back again now for Aaron Rodgers, because he said that they weren't incredibly direct with him. But they had a conversation and the Packers wanted to move on and said, what do you want to do? And Rodgers said, listen, now I'm going to move on as well, and I want to go play for the New York Jets. So as of right this second, the compensation is not in place. It is the Packers and the Jets who are currently negotiating compensation. And the reason I'm putting such an emphasis on that is because there are those who are basically looking to pin blame, whether it's on Aaron Rodgers for taking as long as he did, which, by the way, he had his decision last week, and a lot of people were throwing a lot of crap at Rodgers for being a diva, for drawing this out, etc. Meanwhile, it's been in the Packers and Jets' hands as they try to negotiate whatever the compensation is going to be. So people are trying to pin it on Aaron Rodgers, and there are also those who are trying to pin it on the Green Bay Packers, when again, it's the Packers and Jets. The Packers are looking for fair compensation, and the Jets are looking for fair compensation. It is both sides trying to work it out. And I am just frustrated because it seems like there's so much finger pointing, and depending on who you read, who you watch, etc., it seems like we're going for the simple answer of like, wow, the Packers organization, they're garbage. They're just terrible. Look how evil they are to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he's such a diva. He's such attention seeking. He's terrible too for dragging this out. And it can be everything, right? It can be both. There can be nuance here. And I don't think that there's necessarily a bad guy in this situation. Now, I have called the Packers out on this before because I think Aaron a couple years ago brought up a great point about alum that fans invest their time in. And if the Packers want to say this is all about family and togetherness and team, well, then you should do the common courtesy of being direct with the players and be like, listen, it just isn't going to work out. And Rodgers said that's what he wanted. He wanted transparency. But again, that is only one side of the story. Is the Packers, they haven't really said much except for what Goody said back at the Combine and, of course, Mark Murphy's comments from last week. But I digress. So at this point, Rodgers says he wants to play for the Jets. We are now waiting to see what that compensation is going to be. I've seen a lot of things about leverage, about how the Packers had no leverage because Rodgers has a major contract. You don't know how long Rodgers wants to play. However, I will argue actually the opposite, that I think the Packers have a little bit more leverage than some people will admit, because the Jets have kind of run out of options for what they can get at quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo has been signed. Derek Carr has been signed. And even guys like Jameis Winston have been signed. The Jets ownership at the end of the season said we are going to be very aggressive this offseason to get a veteran QB. They are obviously all in on Aaron Rodgers and trying to get him. And now the well is kind of dried up for QBs. On top of that, Aaron Rodgers saying, yeah, I'm intending to play with the Jets. If this deal falls through, the Jets fan base may march down to MetLife and burn it to the ground. So there's a lot of pressure on the Jets front office to get this deal done, which I do think helps the Packers. Of course, we're hopefully looking at the number 13 overall pick, and then there might be some potential conditional picks depending on if Rodgers plays next season or not. So there's that. We're going to have to wait and see. So it's not official, but Aaron Rodgers is 99.9% going to play with the Jets unless something catastrophic happens and falls through. So that's that part of the news here. And during this talk, Rodgers was pretty honest. He went back to the organization drafting Jordan Love, but actually went back further than that. Was talking about when he was drafted, it was just a different front office. You had Bob Harlan. Love Bob Harlan, the legendary president of the Green Bay Packers. And now you have Mark Murphy. Goody was not in the GM role. And so things have just shifted over the years. And he talked about when the Packers drafted Jordan Love and how that was the organization indicating that Rodgers was a declining player. And they would have had these conversations about retirement, being traded, etc. if he did not win back-to-back MVPs, which I agree with him 100%. That is what happened. And now they're having this conversation because they didn't make the playoffs. He didn't win MVP, and you have Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers has an enormous contract, and there's just things that need to be sorted out. So he goes down that road, says he has nothing but appreciation for Green Bay. There's no malice there. There's nothing whatsoever. He actually called Pat McAfee out because Pat basically implied or insinuated that the Jets hired Nathaniel Hackett to try and lure Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers called that crap right out and said, well, that's a disservice to Nathaniel Hackett, and that makes the Jets look bad if that was the case, because Nathaniel Hackett is a great coach, and Aaron Rodgers has a really great connection with Hackett. Rodgers went on to also say there was only one other guy that he wanted to be reunited with, and implied heavily that that was Davante Adams on the Raiders, but of course that didn't work out. They got Jimmy Garoppolo, and so all of this is said, he kind of wraps it up, excited, not talking about jersey number yet or anything like that. And unfortunately, this is not completely over because Rodgers is going to play for the Jets next year, but we just have to wait and see how long both sides are going to drag this out until they can come to a compromise as to what compensation is fair for Aaron Rodgers. And now to kind of get past that recap a little bit, let's talk about Jordan Love for a hot second. Jordan Love, drafted in 2020, has sat for 3 years. There were times where I heard things, people I knew heard things, that Jordan Love's development was not going well. And there was a lot of chatter about that. We talked about this on GPS with EJ because he heard the same exact things. And then something shifted in which it got real quiet. And instead you saw Jordan Love this past season. He looked better. And so now the organization, which has kind of been wishy-washy about Jordan Love, they gave Aaron Rodgers $1 kajillion last offseason and put themselves in this position and are now willing to roll the dice with Jordan Love. I think that shows how much confidence they have in him. And I want to say this. I hope Jordan Love absolutely crushes it. I am not going to have any illusions that Jordan Love is going to be another Hall of Fame QB. I hope he's a great QB. Aaron was praising him on the Pat McAfee show. But I will say that the Green Bay Packers, for the first time in a very, very long time, their expectations are not going to be to win a Super Bowl this year. And ever since Aaron Rodgers has taken over as the starter, starting around 2010, that's been the expectation every single year when they found out, oh, damn, he's really, really good. 2008 was pretty good. 2009, they had a shootout with the Cardinals in the playoffs, and you're like, oh, okay, no, this kid can play. And so now with Jordan Love, I've been saying this now for weeks, they are going to take the approach of the Bears and hopefully not getting the first overall pick, but they're going to take the approach of, hey, what do we have here? They have a young core group of talented players. Do we have our franchise QB? We have 2 seasons to figure it out because Jordan Love is on the 4th year of his contract. He has not played an entire season. And so they're going to pick up his 5th year option. We'll have 2 years to figure out if he is the guy. If he's not, they'll be going somewhere else. If he is, fantastic. They'll wind up extending him. And then we move along and try to contend for Super Bowls again. And so I hope Jordan Love absolutely crushes it. I hope Aaron Rodgers crushes it in New York. I am a diehard Packers fan, and unless the Jets are playing the Packers, I hope Aaron Rodgers does well too. So I think there can be both. Both of those things can exist, and that's just where I am. And on top of that, in terms of how I feel about Aaron Rodgers leaving, I have thought for this offseason that it's been time. Because, and that's not a reflection on Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to crush it this season with the Jets. I think they have a talented team, and on top of that, I don't think he's washed at all. Can he make all the throws 100% of the time? No. But he also had a broken thumb last year, and there was also other things that were going on. You had O-line injuries, you had wide receivers who were young, etc. There's lots of reasons. But I think the guy can still sling the ball and can play really, really well at a very, very high level. So that's not the reason why. It has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. What it has to do with, I think the best place for Aaron Rodgers to succeed is not with the Green Bay Packers this season, because they are in this kind of weird reload, rebuildy type of limbo. And for Rodgers, who's going to make $60 million this year and is an aging QB who was 90% out the door, going to retire from the NFL, I mean, there's no reason to kind of put him through that, especially if we don't think that this roster can win a Super Bowl this season. Hell, maybe next season they'll reload and they'll be ready to go, but it ain't this season. So because of that, it makes the most sense for them to move on from Aaron Rodgers. So I understand 100% where the organization is coming from. I also understand Aaron Rodgers going, well, like, all right, well, then I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to go to New York because he still thinks that he can play. And I agree with him. And so now it is a new era. For only the 3rd time in my life, this upcoming football season, when week 1 hits, there will be a new starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And that is freaking weird because logically, rationally, I can totally get my head around it. It's time to move on from Aaron Rodgers. But emotionally, I am not going to lie. There are a lot of emotions, and it is very bittersweet to watch Aaron Rodgers go because that guy has been on this team since I was 14 years old. He has been on this team more than half of my entire life. That's a long time to play football. A starter for 15 years. He's been on the team since 2005. That's insane. And so it is going to be very weird to see him in another jersey. It's going to be very, very strange to watch him throw to other receivers. It felt weird watching all these Jets players advocate for him to come to New York. And there was a protectiveness of like, wait, no, that's my QB. And it's weird sitting here now going, well, technically, yes, he still is while he's still under contract, but in a matter of weeks, days, what have you, he's not going to be. And that is going to take some getting used to. When Brett Favre left with the Jets, I understood a little bit more. When he went to the Vikings, absolutely crushed me because Brett Favre was my favorite player growing up. And Aaron Rodgers, that man, he has allowed me to watch my team win a Super Bowl. And that I will be forever grateful for. And I know that Rodgers has said things over the years that a lot of people disagree with, that rub people the wrong way. Hell, things that he has said, I definitely disagree with. And this, again, points out, don't hold people on pedestals and idolize them, whether it's celebrities, athletes, etc., because they are just people and people you can disagree with and people can make mistakes, etc. Look at Brett Favre, for example. And it's very sad that Rodgers is not going to be playing anymore. I would have felt sad if he retired, and now I feel sad that he's going to another team. And I wish him well, and I really, truly hope he does well, as long as it's not against the Packers, because I will always be a Green Bay Packers fan. And on the stream, I kind of just went through my fandom. And one of the first memories I ever have of the Green Bay Packers, because I became a fan when I was 6 years old, and it was when Packers beat the Cowboys, and then they went on to lose the Super Bowl to the Broncos in Super Bowl 32. That was my first real memory of the Green Bay Packers. And all the way up until 2010, I never experienced them winning a Super Bowl. I saw them get really, really close a bunch of times, but they never won a Super Bowl. And then with Aaron Rodgers and a lot of other talented people on that team, they won a Super Bowl, and I got to witness that. And that can never be taken away. And I am so eternally grateful for that because I know that other fans have this perception. And I think to some point it is true for many Packers fans, but I think they have this perception of Packers fans are so entitled and greedy and what have you of oh, you've had back-to-back Hall of Fame QBs for 30 plus years. You don't know what it's like to lose. You've had 2 bad seasons, etc. They're right. They're 100% right. However, since I started this show back in 2015 and I started talking to other fans, I am not going to lie to you. I have been able to objectively look at the Green Bay Packers and go, damn, I need to enjoy every second of this. And that's difficult to do when they have heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss in the playoffs. But I will tell you, some of my favorite moments are the 2013 season in which you have the Packers, they beat the Bears, Randall Cobb on 4th down last week was incredible. Just one of my favorite moments of all time. Probably my favorite Aaron Rodgers moment. You have the run the table season, which was amazing. You got the Hail Marys. You have the Hail Mary in Detroit. You have them going back-to-back NFC Championship games and the heartbreak of that. But every January, I was expecting to watch the Packers play playoff football. And that is a statement that a lot of fans around this league have never been able to experience. So I do not take that for granted. And now we are going into the unknown in which Jordan Love, who knows if he's going to be good? I'm not going to put that expectation on him that he is going to come out and be a Hall of Famer and be amazing and a god in his first season. I'm not, because that's not what I expect. I think he's going to be a good player, and I pray that he's going to be a great player. But I'm still going to root for the team. And so now, as we sit here in this weird transition period, I'm just reflective. And I'm very grateful that Aaron Rodgers, regardless of all of his flaws and all the things that have been levied against him, what have you, I'm grateful that he allowed my team to be as successful as they were, because there were many years where he was the reason they were successful. And I loved watching him play football. And I loved watching my team succeed with him as the quarterback. And that is something that I will always hold on to. And that's why I'm going to root for him in New York or New Jersey, depending on what you call him. That's why. And so as we sit here and kind of try to figure out what's next, and there will be plenty of videos and we have plenty of time to get to what comes next. But that brings me to my second and final note, and arguably the most important one. And that is, thank you, Aaron. So, folks, thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.